Hello everyone, welcome to Real Movie. Today we bring you a film about a man who wakes up one day to find that both his wife and his PhD have ended up belonging to someone else. On a Monday morning, Martin Harris, a biology PhD working at University, arrives in Berlin, Germany, with his beloved wife Lily to prepare for an upcoming biology summit. Perhaps due to excitement, Martin accidentally leaves a briefcase on a luggage cart while hailing a taxi outside the airport.
After getting into the taxi, Lily reminds Martin that they have a meeting on Saturday with Professor Bay, a leading figure in the biology field attending the summit. Martin quickly takes out his phone to jot down a memo, completely forgetting about the briefcase. It isn't until they arrive at the hotel and need to present identification to check in that Martin realizes his briefcase, containing all his ID documents, was left behind at the airport. Realizing the urgency of the situation, Martin rushes to hail another taxi back to the airport without even informing Lily. As she turns around at the hotel front desk, all Lily sees is her husband's hurriedly departing figure, leaving her confused. On the way, Martin tries to call Lily to explain, but perhaps due to poor signal in Berlin, he can't get through. To make matters worse, heavy rain has caused traffic congestion. Frustrated, Martin complains, prompting the female taxi driver to take an alternative route. Just then, a box suddenly falls off a truck ahead. The female driver quickly swerves to avoid it, but the wet road causes the car to skid uncontrollably. In an instant, the vehicle crashes through the guardrail and plunges straight into the river. With a loud crash, Martin slams his head against the window and loses consciousness. Fortunately, the female driver is a strong swimmer. She not only smashes the window to escape, but also manages to pull Martin out of the water in time. Soon, rescuers arrive at the riverbank and begin administering first aid to Martin. Strangely, however, the female driver quietly slips away amidst the commotion. Normally, this would be considered a mere accident, and she wouldn't be held responsible. She might even receive a commendation for her bravery. Why did she choose to flee in secret? We'll set that mystery aside for now. The scene shifts to a hospital, where Martin wakes up from his coma. Shockingly, he only remembers that his name is Martin Harris, he is a biology PhD, and his wife's name is Lily. Beyond that, he can't even recall Lily's phone number. The doctor informs Martin that he has been unconscious for 4 days, since he had no identification on him, only a branded wristwatch and a botanical guide. The hospital has been unable to confirm his identity, and can only wait for his spouse or family to report him missing. To Martin's great disappointment, he waits an entire day, yet Lily never comes to claim him. Searching through his personal belongings, he finds some comfort in seeing Lily's name engraved on his watch and an inscription from his father on the front page of the botanical guide. However, the book also contains 4 rows of numbers that resemble some kind of code. What exactly they mean, Martin can't remember for now. Just then, a news report airs on TV. It's about the upcoming biology summit. This reminds Martin of his participation, and without heeding the doctor's advice, he rushes to the hotel mentioned in the report. Upon arrival, he goes to the front desk and asks for his room key, but when the receptionist requests his ID, he realizes he has nothing to prove his identity. Given the high-profile attendees of the summit, the staff doesn't take any chances and immediately regards Martin as a potential security threat. At that moment, Martin catches a glimpse of his wife Lily's silhouette and quickly follows her into the banquet hall. However, to his shock, instead of showing joy at seeing him, Lily looks wary and asks, "Who are you?" "I don't know you." Then she waves over a man nearby and says, "This is my husband, Martin." Martin stands frozen in disbelief, staring at the man who calmly presents his ID badge, which clearly reads, Dr. Martin Harris, Biology, PhD. Just as Martin is about to question him, security intervenes and escorts him out of the banquet hall, taking him to the security office. Confused and desperate, Martin tries to explain himself to the guards. As he recalls Lily's strange demeanor, he becomes convinced that she is being coerced into denying him, and that the man claiming to be him must be an imposter. Determined to prove his identity, Martin grabs the nearby phone and calls his colleague Cole, hoping for help, but the call doesn't go through. This only makes security more suspicious of him. To verify his claims, they review the hotel's surveillance footage from the day Lily checked in. However, since Martin had rushed off in a taxi and hadn't entered the hotel with her, there is no recorded evidence of his presence. As a final check, security pulls up the online biography of Dr. Martin Harris. Just when Martin thinks he might finally clear his name, he is utterly dumbfounded. The profile picture on the page is of the imposter. Now, he has no way to prove who he truly is. To avoid escalating the situation, Martin tells security that he was recently in a car accident and is still experiencing confusion. He even shows them the doctor's ID badge as proof. Seeing that he is a patient, the guards decide to let him go. As Martin leaves the hotel, he looks through the glass and sees Lily and the imposter Martin acting affectionately. A wave of confusion washes over him as he walks aimlessly through the streets. With no identification and nowhere to stay, he decides to spend the night in the subway.
Just then, he notices a car following him. Alarmed, he quickly descends into the tunnel, only to realize that a bespectacled man is now trailing him. Clearly, the man doesn't have good intentions. Thinking fast, Martin dodges into a departing train just in time, leaving the pursuer stranded on the platform. Still shaken, he sits on the subway seat, trying to gather his thoughts. He recalls a few key details and writes them down. Saturday noon, meeting with Professor Bay in the university lab. Sunday afternoon, attending Prince Shada's welcome party. He remembers Professor Bay somewhat, but he has no recollection of who Prince Shada is. The next morning, Saturday, Martin exits the subway station and notices a taxi parked nearby. Its logo matches that of the taxi he had taken on the day of the accident. This means the cab from that day belonged to the same company as the one in front of him. Determined to uncover the truth about his crash, Martin heads to the taxi company. However, when he asks about the female driver from that day, the employees claim that no such person works there. But Martin immediately picks up on the hesitation in one of their expressions. Someone is hiding something. Seizing the opportunity, Martin corners the man when he is alone and presses him for answers. At first, the man hesitates, but when Martin explains that he just wants to properly thank the female driver and is even willing to pay a generous reward for saving his life, the man finally decides to tell him the truth. It turns out that the female driver is named Gina, an undocumented immigrant. She works at a restaurant during the day and drives her car at night to make extra money. Following this lead, Martin quickly arrived at the restaurant where Gina worked. However, due to her cautiousness as an illegal immigrant, Gina firmly denied being the driver and appeared displeased, wanting to send Martin away. Seeing this, Martin sincerely thanked her and left. Afterward, Martin, relying on his memory, made his way to Professor Bai's lab. To his surprise, the imposter Martin had already arrived ahead of him. Professor Bai, who had only communicated with Martin through phone calls, had no idea who the real Martin was. At that moment, the imposter Martin quickly pointed at Martin and accused him of impersonating himself. Martin didn't back down and described the details of his phone conversations with Professor Bai, attempting to prove his identity. To his shock, the imposter Martin also seemed to know the details of the conversations, and both of them repeated the same words in unison. Professor Bai was stunned by the scene, and the arguing drew the attention of security. Martin was the first to accuse the imposter. However, in the next moment, the imposter Martin pulled out his wallet, showing his ID with a photo, proving that he was the real Martin. The photo was of him and Lily on their honeymoon. Martin was immediately speechless, his mind in turmoil. If the imposter was the real Martin, then who was he? But in his memories, he clearly remembered being on honeymoon with Lily, and the watch he was wearing was a gift from her at that time. For a moment, Martin felt dizzy, and then everything went black as he collapsed. Martin was hospitalized again. When he woke up, he was completely confused. A nurse, seeing his distress, recommended her old friend, Jürgen, who had been an East German spy. When it came to finding people and confirming identities, Jürgen was the perfect person to help. At that moment, the doctor entered and explained that after the car accident, Martin had suffered memory loss and fainting, and it was likely due to abnormal brain activity. He suggested an MRI to check further. As he spoke, he had the nurse administer a sedative. Amid the hum of the MRI machine, Martin drifted in and out of consciousness, and fragments of memories flashed in his mind, memories of him and Lily. Suddenly, a few strange sounds came from outside, followed by a familiar face rushing towards him. It was the man in glasses, who was pretending to be a doctor and was trying to take Martin out of the hospital. He even injected an unknown substance into Martin's IV. Martin was horrified, but the sedative had left him weak and powerless. Just then, the nurse barged in to verify the man's identity. Seeing the situation exposed, the man in glasses ruthlessly killed the nurse. While he was busy moving her body, Martin managed to regain control of his body from the shock, and with great effort, he broke free and fled the hospital. He navigated through the crowd, recalling everything that had happened in the past couple of days. Martin was now certain that he was the real Martin. Someone had stolen his identity and was controlling his wife, Lily, planning to cause trouble at the upcoming biology conference. With this in mind, Martin desperately searched his memory for Lily's phone number and called her, but when he answered, it was the imposter Martin on the other end. This only strengthened Martin's belief in his suspicions. He needed an ally to expose the imposter's evil deception and reclaim his wife and identity. So Martin found Jürgen, the former agent recommended by the nurse, and confided in him about everything he had been through recently. Jürgen immediately became interested and decided to help Martin uncover the truth. After clarifying the situation, Jurgen directed Martin to find the female driver, Gina. If everything Martin had experienced in the past few days had been part of someone's plan, then the person he had connected with due to the accident might hold the key information. Following Jurgen's instructions, Martin found Gina again. As expected, Gina was still very cautious and reluctant to talk. It wasn't until Martin removed the expensive watch from his wrist that Gina's attitude began to soften. However, she still claimed to know nothing about Martin's recent encounters. But seeing how pitiful Martin seemed, she kindly offered to let him stay for the night. The two of them chatted in the small apartment. Gina shared her story of being an undocumented immigrant and firmly stated that she was saving money to leave, which matched what the man from the taxi company had said earlier. The man had even delivered the car keys to Gina. This reassured Martin greatly, and he casually prepared to take a shower. Just as Martin stepped into the bathroom, a group led by the man in glasses stormed into Gina's apartment. Hearing the sound of water in the bathroom, they immediately took Gina hostage and barged into the bathroom with guns drawn. Luckily, Martin was quick on his feet and managed to climb onto the roof. The group assumed he had escaped, so they relaxed their guard. However, Martin had not gone far. He unexpectedly returned through the front door, knocked out one of the criminals with a stick, and knocked the man in glasses to the ground. The two immediately became entangled in a fight, but Martin, still injured, was at a disadvantage. Fortunately, Gina acted quickly, using a needle the criminals had left behind to stab the man in glasses in the neck. Martin tried to question him, but the man had either fainted or died from the needle. Martin immediately fled with Gina but encountered a roadblock halfway. However, perhaps due to an adrenaline surge, Martin suddenly displayed incredible driving skills, managing to break through the encirclement and safely blend into the crowd. However, Gina was still deeply unsettled. As an ordinary person, she had been dragged into this dark conspiracy and witnessed the death of her friend. Overcome with emotion, she slapped Martin across the face, but she soon regained her composure. Realizing that she was now a target of the assassins, her only option was to help Martin. Under the dim light, Martin flipped through the book he had in his hand. Suddenly, he realized it was a cipher book. The 4 lines of numbers in the book corresponded to characters in the text, but the result was perplexing. It listed the names of 2 common plants. The next morning, Martin met with Gina and Jurgen, where he shared his discovery. Jurgen also brought new information. In the upcoming summit, 2 high-profile figures were expected to attend. One was Professor Bai, whom Martin knew, who had invented a groundbreaking genetic engineering technique that could greatly increase crop yields and intended to make the research freely available to the public. The other was the Prince, Shada, the economic leader of a certain country, who had funded Professor Bai's research. However, Bai's research had disrupted the interests of many monopolistic groups who had directed their efforts toward Prince Shada. These groups had made multiple assassination attempts on the Prince, aiming to halt Bai's research. Although the Prince had narrowly escaped several assassination attempts, the summit was still filled with danger. It was possible that someone impersonating Martin's identity was trying to get close to the Prince with malicious intent. The welcome party for Prince Shada was tonight, and time was running out. Martin decided to first find Lily. No matter what would happen that night, he had to protect his wife. However, Lily refused to go with him, and instead told him to go to the airport to retrieve the briefcase and wait for her there. Martin suspected that Lily was under the control of the villains, and that only by reclaiming his identity could he expose the imposter and rescue Lily. So, he hurried with Gina to the airport and made a quick call to Jurgen along the way to keep him updated. At the same time, Jurgen was also working hard to find any clues. He reviewed the airport surveillance footage and found images of Martin and Lily together, confirming that the couple had indeed arrived in Berlin.
It also meant that the imposter had truly assumed Martin's identity. Suddenly, a strange phone call came in. The caller claimed to be Martin's colleague and close friend, Cole, who taught at University A. After receiving Martin's plea for help, Cole had kindly come to Berlin to verify his identity and was on his way to Jurgen's house. Jurgen welcomed Cole's arrival over the phone, but after hanging up, he revealed a knowing smile. Soon, Cole arrived at Jurgen's place. Jurgen politely brewed a pot of coffee and exchanged a few words with Cole. Then, unexpectedly, he poisoned himself. It turned out that Jurgen had discovered that the terrorist organization District 15 had been involved in several assassination attempts on Prince Shada. The so-called Cole had slipped up during the phone conversation earlier. Martin clearly worked at M University, not University A. This meant that Cole was an imposter, likely a killer from District 15. Jurgen knew he couldn't escape the pursuit of the killers, so he chose this way to preserve his dignity as a former agent. Meanwhile, at the airport, Martin successfully found the briefcase and retrieved the identity information within. Looking at the ID with his name and the biological research papers inside, he was finally relieved. He decided to wait for Lily there, planning to escape the cruel struggle with her. On the other hand, Gina felt a little melancholic. Martin had regained his life, and it was time for her to return to hers. She returned the watch that symbolized the love between Martin and Lily to him, and, with reluctance, turned to leave. But when she looked back, she was horrified to see Martin in the middle of a conversation suddenly get electrocuted by a man in a leather jacket. He was then forcefully thrown into a car by 2 people. Gina, seeing this, quickly stole a car and chased after the black vehicle. Not long after, Martin was taken to a platform where Cole mockingly asked, "You don't really think you're Martin Harris, do you?" Martin's mind went blank, and just as he was about to argue, he heard the shocking truth. It turned out that there was no such person as Martin Harris. The man before him was also a killer from District 15. The truth was even more devastating than Martin could have imagined. Martin Harris was merely an alias created by the organization to infiltrate the summit. As for Lily, she was not his wife at all. She was his partner in assassination. They had come to Berlin with the sole purpose of carrying out a deadly mission. However, Martin had become so deeply immersed in his fabricated identity that he genuinely believed himself to be the renowned biologist and fantasized about a life with Lily, forgetting entirely about the assassination plot. As a result, the organization had to replace him with someone else to assume the role of Martin Harris, all while awaiting the right moment to eliminate the useless Martin. Lily's actions in leading him to the trap were part of the scheme set up by Cole and the organization. Martin was completely stunned by this brutal revelation, and before he could react, the man in the leather jacket knocked him to the ground. At that critical moment, Gina arrived just in time. She crashed her car into Cole and the man in the leather jacket, sending both of them tumbling down the stairs. They died on the spot, and Martin managed to escape with his life. In the aftermath, he rifled through Cole's briefcase and uncovered critical information. The organization had planted a bomb in the prince's hotel room 3 months ago. The bomb was set to detonate as soon as the party began, and the prince checked into the hotel. The person who had placed the bomb was none other than Martin himself. Martin immediately rushed to the hotel with Gina and demanded to enter the prince's room to defuse the bomb. Initially, the hotel manager dismissed Martin as speaking nonsense, but when he followed Martin's instructions and found the surveillance footage from 3 months ago, he believed Martin after seeing footage of him entering the presidential suite. The manager then escorted the prince out of the hotel just in time. At that moment, Martin remembered the cipher in the catalog, which was Professor Bai's computer password. This meant that the target in District 15 was not only Prince Shada, but also Professor Bai and his billions worth of research. Martin immediately got up and ran desperately to find Professor Bai. Meanwhile, Lily had already infiltrated Professor Bai's room and used another password from the catalog to steal the valuable research. She then activated the bomb remotely. Afterward, Lily met with the fake Martin, and upon hearing that Prince Shada had already evacuated, she decided to return to the suite to defuse the bomb, as the prince had left and innocent lives shouldn't be harmed. The fake Martin, unable to persuade her, blocked Professor Bai's path while holding a knife. In a critical moment, Martin arrived just in time, and a fierce struggle ensued between him and the fake Martin. The two fought for a long time without deciding a winner. Suddenly, a loud explosion went off in the hotel, followed by the walls collapsing. Lily failed to defuse the bomb, triggering a violent explosion that killed her on the spot. At the same time, Martin was hit by the shockwave, slamming his head onto the ground. Fortunately, he was not injured and regained his memory due to the impact. The fighting skills he had learned as an assassin also returned to his mind. The two Martins continued to fight, but this time, Martin gained the upper hand and dealt with the imposter. The next day, the biology summit took place as planned, and Professor Bai presented his research to the world. This great act would benefit humanity in the future. Martin, who survived the conspiracy, walked alongside Gina. After experiencing amnesia, Martin, while searching for his true identity, gradually realized the cruelty and brutality of the terrorist organization. With a new identity and soul, he set out to find a future that belonged to him. The Movie Unknown is a gripping suspense action film with a fast-paced rhythm and no dull moments. The plot builds up layer by layer, making it impossible to look away as the audience unravels the complex clues. Each twist is perfectly timed, keeping everyone on the edge of their seats. What's even more fascinating is that, until the very last moment, we realize that the protagonist's true identity remains a mystery. This not only cleverly ties into the storyline, but also symbolizes his struggle to break free from the shackles of truth and lies, ultimately embracing a new beginning. Upon closer reflection, there's also a philosophical exploration of identity and self-recognition. With that, the film concludes. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in our next movie.